1960 years, California. On the one hand, there were flower children, songs of freedom, winds of peace and love. But a cold breath interfered with these winds, the shadow of the Zodiac Killer. This killer wrapped not only his victims but the whole city in a web of fear. The threats in his letters, the seemingly impossible to decipher ciphers, and the wit that taunted the police. His identity was never revealed, but the traces he left remain chilling to this day. But what were the secrets behind this mysterious case? Why didn't the Zodiac stop, and how did it capture the minds of so many people for so long? Here is one of the darkest and most unsolved riddles in American history. The story of the Zodiac Killer. Murders committed by the Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer's attacks on his victims spread like a wave of fear through the streets of California. It all began on a cold December night. On December 20, 1968, a horrific event disturbed the peace of a small town. A young couple, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, were brutally murdered in their car. A symbol of innocence, love, and youth, they were the first pawns on the Zodiac's game board. This murder was just the beginning. The Zodiac had chosen its prey and no one could solve the mystery behind this choice. Only a few months passed and the Zodiac was back on the scene. This time, Michael Mageau and Darlene Ferrin were brutally attacked in a quiet car park. This time it was different, Michael survived. But the Zodiac knew he couldn't silence him. Michael was perhaps the first and only person to see the Zodiac's face, but even that was not enough to stop the Zodiac. His frightened testimony tried to unravel the Zodiac's mystery, but the only thing that unraveled like a dark shadow was the city's safety. Zodiac was playing this deadly game whose rules were determined by him at every move. He struck not only with his gun but also with his knife, inflicting both physical and psychological blows. The police were after him, the newspapers were making headlines, and the public was living in fear. The Zodiac chose his victims by trying different methods each time, leaving no trace, leaving no trail. Like a hunter, it was calm and planned, and with every move, it made us question who was the prey and who was the hunter. The Zodiac left a deep imprint in everyone's mind, leaving almost no trace behind. This killer not only killed his victims but also bound the city and even the entire country in a chain of fear. With each attack, the Zodiac showed once again how cold-blooded and calculated he was. But what was truly terrifying was the impossibility of predicting the Zodiac's next move. Everyone knew that Zodiac would not stop, at least not until his own game was over. But only he knew when that game was over. Zodiac's letters and ciphers. The Zodiac Killer was perhaps one of the most complex minds in history, who managed to involve not only his victims but an entire city and even the country in his game. Not content with killing, this killer staged a real theater of horror with his letters and ciphers. It was not enough for him to instill fear, he also wanted to draw attention to himself. With the letters he sent to the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald, he showed that he was not only a murderer, but also a master of mind games. These letters were not only written in the blood of slaughtered innocents, they also conveyed the Zodiac's arrogance, intelligence, and deep contempt for the police. "You can't stop me," he said with every word. The symbolization of the number of his victims was a challenge to him, a mockery of the police, drawing them into a game they would never catch. But perhaps Zodiac's greatest weapon was more than his bloody murders, his ciphers. They were not a simple alphabet code, they were a complex series of symbols, numbers, and seemingly meaningless letters. He had 4 major ciphers, one of which was only deciphered 51 years later. Over the years, these ciphers have left experts, amateur detectives, and enthusiasts helpless. These seemingly impossible codes allowed the Zodiac to hide in the shadows. Everyone wondered who he was, but he was just watching. "Do you have the courage to reveal my identity?" he challenged. Most importantly, his biggest and most complex cipher remains unsolved. Perhaps this code will reveal the true identity of the Zodiac, his face behind this dark game. Perhaps it will never be solved and Zodiac will remain one of history's greatest mysteries. But one thing is certain, every cipher, every symbol sent by Zodiac reveals once again what a dangerous, clever, and calculated predator he is. This game is not over yet, because the rules of the game will not change until Zodiac himself appears. This is his stage and we are merely spectators. The mystery of the Zodiac will always hang over us like a shadow until it is solved, even if time passes. And perhaps that is exactly what he wanted. What was the fate of the investigation? While the chaos left behind by the Zodiac Killer haunted the police force for years, the fate of the investigation remained just as dark and uncertain. Everyone wondered who the Zodiac was, but the Zodiac continued to cunningly cover his tracks. Throughout the investigation, eyes were focused on a few main suspects, but one by one, the killer slipped through their fingers. One of the most famous suspects was Arthur Lee Allen. His name was repeatedly juxtaposed with the identity of the Zodiac. Some witnesses pointed to him, evidence pointed to him. But the Zodiac had left such a trail that no real clue could ever be found to prove Allen guilty. DNA tests dashed hopes and ruled Allen out. Still, the shadow of the Zodiac never left him. The secrets of the Zodiac were not limited to the official investigation. With the advent of the internet, this mysterious case moved into a whole new arena. Amateur detectives, Zodiac enthusiasts, and theorists devoted themselves to unraveling this knot. Reddit and similar platforms have become a haven for thousands of people gathered around this mystery, sharing their suspicions, discoveries, and wild theories. These online communities scrutinized every trace left by the Zodiac, every password, every letter. And from time to time, some shouted, "I found it." In 2021, a group of decryptors claimed to have deciphered a message of the Zodiac that had been unsolvable for years. This brought everyone's attention back to the Zodiac. But even this solution did not give a definitive clue to the Zodiac's identity. It was as if the Zodiac continued to play this game even after his death, like a shadow that everyone was after but no one could catch. The fate of the investigation remained uncertain, a reflection of Zodiac's dark mind. Suspects, theories, internet discussions. Even when it all came together, Zodiac's secrets remained a puzzle waiting to be solved. Because the rules of this game are still in the hands of the Zodiac, and those hands are tightly closed behind the shadows. Zodiac's profile drawing. While the identity of the Zodiac Killer remains a mystery, the traces he leaves behind show that he is not only a killer but also a hunter who preys on his mind. The Zodiac was sometimes unnoticed when he attacked his victims. Some witnesses felt and saw his presence. In 1969 he confronted a police officer, but unfortunately, this encounter was not enough to reveal the true face of the Zodiac. Deciphering who he was a much more complex puzzle than recognizing his face. The Zodiac was a master of disguise, hiding his face behind masks, concealing his tracks behind ciphers, and always staying one step ahead of his prey. Experts sat down time and time again to profile the Zodiac. They analyzed his victims' traces, letters, passwords, and moments of attack to recognize him. Every detail was searched for clues to the Zodiac's psychology. He was described as gifted, a control freak, and constantly seeking attention. He was no ordinary killer, he was a shadow dancing in the public eye. Zodiac was playing a game not only with his victims but with the entire public, the police, and the media. There was only one rule in this game: Zodiac never lost. Psychological analyses revealed that he was an arrogant and manipulative personality. He was a chess master and the whole world was pawns on his board. For Zodiac, control was everything. He appeared when he wanted, disappeared when he wanted, and always left behind those who wanted to follow his trail. Attention was not a necessity for him, but a passion. His letters to the newspapers, his indecipherable ciphers, and his efforts to outmaneuver the police were all reflections of his obsession with control. Legacy of the Zodiac. The legacy of the Zodiac Killer is not limited to the murders he committed. His shadow continues to permeate the depths of popular culture decades later. He became a symbol of fear, mystery, and unsolved riddles. He lived not with the mourning his victims left behind, but with the scars he left on minds. Zodiac has inspired many films, books, and documentary series. He became more than a killer, he became a legend. One of the most well-known productions was the 2007 film Zodiac starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Robert Downey Jr. This film invited the audience into the dark world of the Zodiac, revealing the cold truth and the lack of solution. Those who traced the Zodiac realized that once they stepped into this riddle, it was difficult to go back. Every detail, every cipher, every witness testimony created a new question mark, while the identity of the Zodiac remained in the dark. The Zodiac Killer went down in history not only for the murders he committed but also for the psychological games he played with society. He was not only a criminal, but also a master of mystery. The traces he left behind represent more than doors leading to the depths of a labyrinth. We never found the Zodiac, his identity is still a mystery, and the mystery grows with each passing day. But one thing is certain, the Zodiac remains one of the greatest mysteries in American history. This shadowy figure leaves us with a riddle and a constant curiosity. His story is like a door that will never fully close, no matter how hard we try. The shadow of the Zodiac still exists as a mystery in the depths of history and the subconscious of society.